Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explain here, bringing you guys another Boruto 2 Blue Vortex discussion. And today, I want to talk to you guys about something that I think has the potential to be unpopular, but it is something I do strongly believe needs to be considered by the narrative in order to continue raising the stakes even higher, which is not only do I think one of the targets of the Awakened Shinju needs to be consumed, which I think most of us would agree does need to be the case, and it is severely needed for the story. However, I think the story does need to continue pulling the band-aid off of itself and having Gaara be the one that is consumed. Join me in today's newest Naruto Explain video where we take a look at why Gaara needs to be the person consumed by the Shinju target him, that obviously being Ryu. So I know the idea of a legacy character like Gaara meeting such a fate is something that might get on the skin of a lot of fans, which I get it. I mean, legacy characters are legacy characters for a reason. You have a strong attachment to them, but I do strongly believe that this is the correct way to move forward with the story in order to continue raising the stakes. While it might make some Gaara fans feel very uncomfortable, I think this is one of those times where the discomfort is something that the story does need to make fans feel, because it sets up for an even bigger payoff, especially when you take a deeper look into Gaara's character. So Gaara being consumed by Ryu and Boruto 2 Blue Vortex would serve as a deeply poetic and thematically rich moment that ties intrinsically into his character arc. The overall themes of legacy, love, and sacrifice, and the rising stakes of the story are all needed. So what we'll do now is we'll go through a detailed breakdown on why I think that this is the best move for the story to take, even though it would be an unpopular move. So we have the poetic tragedy, a potential death that is tied to love and legacy. So Gaara's entire character arc, it has revolved around the whole concept of love, symbolized by the tattoo on his forehead, which means love in Japanese. His journey started with him being a weapon of destruction, someone who was believed to only be meant to be a burden of hatred. He was saved by Naruto's ideology, and he was transformed eventually into a leader who devoted himself to protecting his people. We all remember how he gave himself up in order to protect the Sand Village from Deidara. That is enormous character growth. He went from absolutely killing people in the tuning exams to giving himself up to protect his villagers. This is why his first death in Naruto, it was deeply symbolic, as he died as the Kazekage trying to protect his village, got captured, got the Biju extracted from him. It was proving his worth through sacrifice rather than fear. That death was at the hands of the Akatsuki, a rogue organization that stole tailed beasts for their own agenda and ended up murdering several Jinchuriki in the process, but he was ultimately saved by Chiyo's life-giving jutsu, and it reinforces the idea that love can revive even the most broken people. That's why that entire scene of Chiyo bringing Gaara back to life and having all those people surrounded around him as he opened his eyes up, that's a beautiful character moment for him. Now in Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, the idea of Gaara falling not just to an external threat like the Akatsuki, and by like the Akatsuki I mean like we see with the Awakened Shinju hunting down their targets, but to have someone who was born from something of his own family, his adopted son Shinki's chakra, is something that creates a cruelly poetic cycle when you think about it. The person who he once saved, Shinki, has unknowingly contributed to Gaara's destruction through Ryu because of how his chakra was taken. The very love that changed Gaara and gave him a new purpose, it is now what is going to basically undo him when you think about it, because it was an act of love that caused Shinki to seal Gaara away in order to ensure that Matsuri cannot get his hands on him, and that resulted in Shinki getting turned into Ryu, and now Ryu is hunting down Gaara. Very poetic. So this is the other part of it. His first death causing him to sacrifice himself for the village, a village that he at times once terrorized. It proved the grounds for his transformation character-wise, and the potential second death if we assume that the Shinju eating their designated target doesn't turn them into another Awakened Shinju, but instead results in their death. Him being devoured by Ryu, made from Shinki's chakra, emphasizes how Gaara's whole journey has come full circle. This time, his struggle isn't about proving his worth, but rather facing the consequences of the bonds that he has formed. And in this case, it is a twisted fate set of consequences he has to form, because he did the right thing by taking Shinki in. Shinki did the right thing by protecting Gaara, but because of the birth of Ryu, having it result in Gaara's undoing, that is beautiful writing. It is an inverse to Gaara's entire character. And to be fair, when you write something like that, you have to be extremely careful, because if it's not handled properly, it can blow up in the face of the writer because readers won't accept it. This has to be done very, very carefully. The thematic depth in terms of love as being both salvation and doom is what all this hinges on. Gaara's adoption of Shinki was one of his most defining post-war acts of love. He saw himself in that orphaned child, and he wanted to guide him down a path where he could be loved instead of feared. He could be loved instead of alone. However, by embracing Shinki as his son, he also became vulnerable in a way that he never was before. If Gaara falls here, it highlights an important theme. Love is powerful, but it does not always guarantee survival if you have it. Naruto's story, when you really dig down deep into it, it was a story about the power of bonds being able to defy fate. It was a super important part of Naruto's entire character arc as a reincarnation of Astra. But Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, as Ikimoto said, is about breaking free of those familiar bonds and expectations, breaking free of predetermined destiny in a way. It leans into a more tragic and uncertain future where love may not always be enough to save people. It is a cruel reflection of how life works in real life. Gaara dying at the hands of someone created from Shinki's chakra, which showed that love, while meaningful, while very important, can also lead to pain and unintended consequences. This makes Shinki's survivor's guilt incredibly compelling whenever Ryu is taken down, knowing that his chakra gave rise to the very creature who consumed the man who raised him. That would be an enormous set of character development for Shinki, because as it is in real life, those moments where we feel most uncomfortable often are the moments that spur the greatest amount of growth in us. The raising of the stakes and establishing that no character is safe is another thing that this accomplishes. So the Boruto series, it's already sealed away Naruto and Sasuke. It's signaling that the old generation, they are fading. They are playing the role that Kakashi and the others played for Naruto's generation. They are not safe. Someone can get Asuma. Yes, I use Asuma's name in a way that was not a noun. However, sealing is different from outright death. While Naruto and Sasuke could theoretically return, if Gaara being devoured by Ryu, it could make his fate irreversible, because we don't know what happens when a Shinju consumes a target that they're looking for. Again, does it make them into another Shinju, or is that only something that is applicable through what we see with the claw grinds when they bite somebody? It would cement the idea that no person from the last generation is truly safe. We see this with the situation Konohamaru's in. Konohamaru was in Naruto's generation. Konohamaru is in a tricky situation with Matsui right now. If Naruto being sealed away was the first shock, if Sasuke being sealed into a tree and used for the birth of Hidari was the second shock, then Gaara actually dying would be the third, and it would hit even harder, especially given the fact that this would be the second time the guy died as Kazekage. Unlike Naruto and Sasuke, you wouldn't have Gaara just being removed from the board. He would be erased in a way that may not allow for resurrection at all. His fate would also create uncertainty. What happens again when a Shinju successfully consumes a human that is their target? Does Gaara's individuality disappear, or does a new type of entity emerge? This uncharted territory in the lore, it makes his death, or even him being sealed into a tree like the others, more mysterious and more foreboding, while also expanding the world building itself. The other thing you have to look at here, and why I feel so strongly about going down this path, is take a look at what the Hidden Sand Village's reaction would be. You would have a lot of political and emotional fallout. losing a Kage, it is no small event. Like, that would be like, again, I don't wish this to happen, but that would be like if the president of the United States got their head blown off. It would be one of those things where it immediately destabilizes not just the United States, but it has profound impacts all across the world. The hidden sand village, it would be thrown into chaos without Gaara being there, much like how the hidden leaf village was destabilized briefly when everybody thought that Naruto was killed by Boruto. Even looking at what happened when Tsunade was taken out by the full power of pain, people saying that it was only one pain that took out Tsunade is disingenuous. All 6 pains chakra was into one. Neither here nor there, but look at what happened there. There was a brief period where the Leaf Village said, who's going to be next Kage? This would lead to someone who does not want the title of Kage having to take it, which is Kankuro. But the thing is that he lacks Gaara's overwhelming presence and authority, and most importantly, he lacks the power. While Kankuro is no slouch, he is nowhere near on the level that Gaara is. He is capable, but the village might potentially not rally behind him in the same way, because Gaara has made a lot of inroads with people in the village. As the son of a Kage, as the brother of a Kage, it is very likely that they eventually come to his side, but it is one of those things where there's a question mark. And it would be really good world building to see how the Sand Village reacts compared to how the Hidden Leaf Village reacted. Also, Shinki's emotional turmoil, it would be at the heart of this fallout. He was already being targeted and turned into a source of power for a Shinju. One of those claw grinds bit him and gave birth to Ryu. Losing Gaara because of all of this, it would deepen his trauma and possibly shape him into a darker, more vengeful figure that is targeting those Shinju in general, but it would also add layers to what we see with Shinki's character and make him come out on top of all this a well-rounded, better written character with a deeper appreciation for the bonds that he holds. The Shinobi Alliance might also take notice as well, realizing that the Shinju threats, they aren't just limited to Konoha, but they are also consuming major figures across different villages. This would be the opposite of what we saw when the Akatsuki were going into different nations and taking the Jinchuriki that were there and extracting the Biju inside of them. The nations were split apart until the 5 Kage summit when Obito forced them to band together. This would be the push for the 5 Kage to officially declare war on Jura and the Shinju. Right now, it's mainly Konoha that is operating in this regard. I know Kashin Koji said, hey, nobody can win. But the thing about Shinobi is that they are stubborn and they will try to face overwhelming odds if there is something that threatens their existence. It feels like we are marching towards a confrontation with Jura, and we are marching towards, most importantly, the other Kage being made aware of what these claw grinds are doing, because we have not seen in the manga whether or not they've been briefed. The death of a Kage, it would result in a worldwide event. It would shake the Shinobi system to its core and reinforce that this generation isn't just facing ordinary enemies. They're dealing with an extinction level crisis that should be treated like an Otsutsuki level threat. The emotional impact on Boruto and the next generations there as well. Boruto has been trying to protect the world all while being viewed as a traitor. It's very noble. If Gaara does fall here, it might push Boruto even further, knowing that every moment spent holding back costs the lives of the people who once supported him, even though those same people now hate him. When you look at Sarada, Mitsuki, and Shinki, this would hit as well. Think about it for a second. Sarada is in the land of wind right now trying to rescue Shinki and Gaara. She would carry more guilt. She already feels some level of guilt because of what happened to Naruto, because for the longest period of time, she didn't know that Naruto wasn't dead. This might push her into a deeper emotional state. With Mitsuki, someone who idolized Boruto, this might be a moment where, as someone who has already begun to question what Boruto's place is, he's going to start looking back at what happened in the aftermath of Naruto, quote, dying, and begin to start asking more questions. And then with Shinki, as mentioned before, this would eventually end up wrecking him, potentially developing a stronger hatred towards the Shinju before eventually pulling Shinki out to be a well-rounded character like his father, someone who has truly understood loss and truly understood what it means to love. This could also set up several ideological clashes, if you will. If Boruto doesn't go out there onto the battlefield because he's worried about Jura, this could lead to tension with the new generation. He's been involved in every single Shinju encounter, even if he didn't directly fight. Yet this is the time he stands on the sideline. This would also potentially lead to issues with Boruto and Kashin Koji, because Koji's telling him, you're not allowed to go to that battlefield under any circumstances. And this would also push Boruto's character development and make Boruto begin to question what it is he's doing with Kashin Koji. Gaara being consumed by Ryu, it would be thematically powerful. It would tie into his story of love and sacrifice. It would raise the stakes, showing that even legacy characters aren't immune from death. It would expand the world building by forcing the hidden sand village to adjust to the death of a Kage. It would add depth to Shinki's character, making him a tragic survivor. It would set up high emotional stakes for the next generation, in particular for Boruto. This moment would cement the Shinju as being unlike any threat we've seen before. They're not just threats, but they are inescapable forces of nature that consume even the strongest. They're not necessarily like the Otsutsuki who show up and say, we're going to harvest. They are a byproduct of nature itself because they came from the Ten Tails. It will push Boruto's story into an even more darker, more unpredictable territory, making it one of the most shocking and impactful twists that we have in the franchise. Obviously, if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing and checking out more content from Naruto Explained by clicking here on the left, or checking out this video from my Anime Explained channel, where I talk about non-Naruto content in the form of video essays, chapter reviews, explained videos, and so much more.